Okay, so with Rurouni Kenshin Season 2, Episode 10, this is actually uncharted territory for me. So this adapts a side story, a one-shot manga about Kenshin's very first use of the original reverse-bladed sword, which is not featured in the original 28-volume run of the manga. So for context, I am most familiar with the original manga run and the 90s anime, as well as the OVAs. What I am not as familiar with are the side stories, although I have read a few of them. I read the Makoto Shishio backstory, but this one I have never checked out before, and I have read a little bit of the Hokkaido arc that is the ongoing continuation, but most of my knowledge is retained within that original story, that original 28-volume run. So this was a unique little entity for me. I was a little bit nervous of them kind of throwing this smack dab in the middle of the Kyoto arc. I'm like, okay, so why are they choosing this moment in particular to tell this little one-shot story? But I was definitely open to seeing what they were going to do with it, and by the end of the episode, I do think it makes a lot of sense to throw this story in here, and it also leads me to believe that the animation studio is going to go out of their way to adapt all the little side stories as well, so I can pretty much guarantee that we're going to see the Makoto Shishio little one-shot backstory also. In fact, I think this season might end with that, or the beginning of season 3 might start with that. I think that might be an interesting little way to either end or begin the season to give us a little break, because at this point, at this rate, we're not going to finish the Kyoto arc by the end of season 2. So in order to give us a kind of a solid ending of the season, or maybe a prologue to the next season, that Shishio story, I swear it's coming. But this was also really fun for me because it was new content. You know, it's like I've been revisiting the same Kenshin story for like the last 20 years, whether it's rewatching the original anime or rereading the manga. And so to get a new story with Kenshin was kind of great. It was really cool to see, and it also recontextualized something that I thought was one way in the manga, but actually is a different way. So whenever it showed the flashback of Shaku Arai, the swordsmith, giving Kenshin that first reverse blade sword, I guess I missed the hidden context, because for my entire life, I always thought that Kenshin had requested that he make that sword for him specifically when he chose to give up killing and begin his life as a wanderer. What this episode and what this side story shows us blatantly is that Kenshin had no idea that this was a reverse-bladed sword until he drew it. So when Shaku gave him that sword and was giving him the critique about what he's attempting to do and how ridiculous it may seem, Kenshin thought he was giving him a new sword, a brand new regular katana to cut down people just the same as he always had before. And after what we learned about Shaku Arai and the fact that he felt that he was kind of compelled or forced to make these swords, not forced as in like, you know, people are holding him up hostage in order to do it, but just that we're in the middle of a war. My craft is forging swords. This is what I'm doing, trying to bring in the new era. You know, that's kind of what he did with himself. And these two reverse blade swords were for this ideal that would probably never come true. So it's actually really interesting to me to think about the idea that Kenshin was beginning his life as a wanderer. Now, I don't want to spoil anything for people that are watching Kenshin for the first time. Obviously, there are a couple very specific reasons as to why Kenshin gave up being a Hitokiri, decided not to kill anymore, and decided to be a wanderer. But I can't really reveal that now because I've been doing all these reviews, not spoiling things for people that are watching Kenshin for the first time. So I kind of have to talk around particular things, but it is intriguing to me that Kenshin would have began his journey taking a brand new sword that he thought might be a real sword. And I'm sure that also plays into his dilemma of wondering if, when, or how he would ever kill somebody again. If this was something that was unavoidable, would he have to eventually draw the sword? Because in this episode, we see that he does everything he can to not draw the sword at first. You know, he's trying his best. He's trying to just dodge, maneuver out of the way, use the sheath to fight, all of these alternatives until he's eventually forced to draw the blade. And it's only once he sees that the blade is reversed that he sort of has this moment of reflection of thinking about how that sharp end has always been pointed out at other people, at the world around him, and now the sharp end is pointed back towards him. Just that symbolism of the pain and the death and the devastation that he's caused in front of him now being kind of put back on him as he seeks for redemption. And that's like all that pain is internalized, and that's what he's feeling constantly. And it's kind of that forever reminder of all the things that he's done. But that very idea that Kenshin began his journey not knowing whether or not he was going to kill again, and then ultimately being relieved by the idea of this reverse blade sword once it was drawn, I thought it was a really powerful moment, and I thought the anime captured it very well, kind of showing the two Kenshins, within his mind, showing the Batosai version of him and the current version of him as he begins this journey. Really, really good stuff, really good symbolism. I liked it a lot. Obviously, the villains here are throwaway stock characters, that Kenshin's going to defeat in 2 seconds, but there was the one character that was associated with the military that recognized Kenshin, and recognized him because of his cross-shaped scar and the description of what he looked like, and thought that Kenshin would be happy to see him and that he would be on his side. And Kenshin just basically points out to him, like, you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. And I love Kenshin kind of putting him in his place. Other than that, there was a lot of humorous aspects of this episode I liked. I like that all the cats just immediately gravitate towards Kenshin, being a cat person myself. I thought that was really funny. I like the couple that took care of him when Kenshin was sick and how he sees a reflection of them in Shaku's son and his wife and their child, even though Kenshin never got to see the child of these two be born. It's showing that idea of what Kenshin was fighting for, that people would be able to live their life in peace and raise a family and not have to deal with the chaos of what Japan was like before. It's like, that's kind of his whole thing, where even though the current government is not good and it's got a lot of corruption in it, and they are too afraid to show any form of weakness whatsoever. That's why they leave villages to rot, and, all of these bad things that happen. You even saw like the police swordsman in the very beginning of the series and how they take advantage of their power and stuff. There's a lot of things that are not good that are happening within the government, but Kenshin is just thinking, as long as it is heading in a direction that is better, where people can actually raise a family, have love in their lives, and not have to be forced into this chaos constantly. That's what I'm fighting for. That's what I'm trying to create, trying to allow to be created, trying to use my sword as a way to protect as opposed to kill. But I also do think that a lot of that decision-making process and that vision that Kenshin saw when he first drew the sword, a lot of it does play into his backstory and what happened there. And I honestly thought that we might have seen a particular character in his head when he was thinking about it. I was like, are they going to reveal somebody? But they did not. They're saving that, so that's okay. But I thought that maybe, we might get a little glimpse, but I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm not going to say anything about Kenshin's backstory just yet. We got a while until that happens. It will be revealed at some point. You will see why, the why, hows, and all of the specifics of Kenshin's transition from the Hitokiri into a wanderer, but that won't be until the arc after the Kyoto arc. So maybe season 4 by the time we get to it. Who knows? Anyways, yeah, I don't have much to say beyond that. I really enjoyed this episode. This was brand new content for me, so I'd never read this before. So that was the most fun aspect of this episode for me, because it's kind of like, you're so starved as a Kenshin fan for especially new anime content. Although we did have the live action movies, which were pretty good. But anyways, tell me what you guys thought of this episode down below. As always, thank you to everybody that sent in a super thanks last time and every time and each and every time. Thank you so much, man. Cannot thank you enough. I really, really appreciate it. Going through this Kenshin series is great, man. Episode 10. So what, we got 13 episodes left, so we're still like barely halfway. And next episode, we are meeting another new character to the series, and this guy is a motherfucking unit, and I can't wait to see him again. So tell me what you think, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later.